We have to talk about this Bill Maher news. Bill Maher is a comedian. He was formerly very left-wing, critical of the Iraq War, supportive of hard left policies. Now he is openly describing himself as a centrist. And you know what he just did recently? He went to meet with Trump. He went to meet with President Trump alongside Kid Rock, and he and Trump had dinner together. And he talked about it on his show. He had the nerve to get in front of his audience and talk about what a charming guy President Trump was. What a charming guy. Yeah, if only that was the requirement for being president, just be a charming guy. He talked about how Trump had such a great sense of humor. How, yeah, look, he's willing to acknowledge that he lost the 2020 election. He's not bitter, he's chill, he's funny. Like, wow, what a nice guy behind closed doors. He's not unhinged like he acts like at his rallies. Wow, this president is so cool. Being president is not about being charming, or at least that's not a measure of how good a president you are. I'm sorry to say. Being charming helps you get elected. It just does. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, those three guys are great examples of that. Donald Trump obviously is not charming at his rallies. He says some of the most incendiary things imaginable. I mean, just denigrating groups of Americans, just denigrating the media as the enemy of the people, suggesting that violence should be taken against them. So, no, he's not charming out in his rallies. He may be charming behind closed doors. I'm willing to grant you that. I have not hung out with Donald Trump behind closed doors. But even if he were insanely charming behind closed doors, I still have to tell you that it is complete and utter malpractice to go out there and lead with that as your argument. Lead with that as the moral of the story. The moral of the story in finding out that Trump is a very charming guy is that, wow, people can be really charming while pushing for the worst policies imaginable, or at least almost as bad as you can get within the American context. I mean, we are pushing right towards fascism, right towards Nazism, and I'm someone who never accused Trump of being a Nazi or a fascist during his first term. What we've got going on here is utterly absurd. We've got him sending American citizens off to camps in El Salvador. We've got talks about taking Greenland against their will. We've got talks about media outlets like CNN and MSNBC being illegal just by their very existence. Like, middle finger up to the First Amendment, hello? So, no, Bill Maher. We will not pay attention to the fact that Trump may be charming behind closed doors. I can take your word for it, and I can still say that you failed. You failed as a comedian. You failed as someone who is supposed to hold the powerful accountable. You're supposed to be out there criticizing the Trump administration, just as you should criticize the Biden administration. Nobody gets a pass because of the letter after their name. This is not partisan. This is about doing what's right. It just so happens that the Republican Party inflicts far more damage on this country than the Democratic Party and helps the country in fewer ways than the Democratic Party does. But you should be out there crucifying the Republican Party, Donald Trump and his Republicans, and Elon Musk for what they're doing to this country. It's costing people their lives. But instead, because you are selfish, you focus on how the president made you feel. Did he give you butterflies in your tummy? Did he make you feel like the most specialist man on the face of this earth? Well, guess what? I've got news for you. Nobody cares about that except for you. Well, nobody who's not a hardcore right-winger cares about that except for you. The hard right is running with this gleefully. They have such big smirks on their face. They're like, look, even Bill Maher recognizes what a cool dude Trump is. Think about how insane the left has gotten everyone. The left has gotten so insane that even their own leftist Bill Maher, he is like, yeah, Trump's a charming guy. He's a cool dude. I get along with him. I had dinner with him, me and Kid Rock, and yeah, he was a cool guy, He was cool, and maybe he was cooler than Obama and Bill Clinton. And by the way, I'm a Democrat, but I still think Trump's pretty cool. This is just how propaganda is made. It's how propaganda is made in order to basically push Americans toward Trumpism, toward far-right policy, without making it out to be far-right policy. We gotta sanitize it. Don't talk about policy. Just talk about, look, he's a cool dude. He's a cool dude. And we saw some of this on the campaign trail. Think about the McDonald's stunt. You know what? I'll give credit where it's due. That was kind of funny seeing Trump walk around in that McDonald's costume. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should vote based on that. Nobody, and I mean nobody, should vote based on the riz of a candidate or the candidate's humor. They should look into policies. But you know what? Look, if you felt charmed by that, I don't totally blame you. You should, however, vote based on policy. That's how it works. And your rhetoric, your commentary, as someone involved in politics, should be based on policy, not on riz. Riz should be stuff that's on the side that you can address. You can address a candidate's riz, okay? I said Tim Walz had riz at one point. Obviously, that didn't show so much in the vice presidential debate, but in other contexts, he did. I talked about how J.D. Vance is very good at sophistry. You know, he's a smooth talker. He's someone who's sharp. He knows how to craft arguments fairly well. But that does not change the fact that he pushes for odious, contemptuous policies which will ruin many Americans' lives. And he lies about immigrants. He says that Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs. He said that during the campaign trail. And when pressed on it, he said he's actually going to keep lying about it. So yeah, I will admit when there are liars who have very good qualities, you know, very good talents, but I'm not going to go out there and say, well, you know, J.D. Vance is a real good dude. You know, he's smart. He went to Yale. What a smart dude. What a sharp guy. You know, he's sharp. That's really cool, bro. And I bet I'd get along with him. You know what? I bet I'd get along with plenty of these people. I bet I would. But that doesn't mean that the policies they're pushing are cool. And that doesn't mean that if I sat down and had a beer with them or a glass of wine or whatever the hell, that I would then come back on my show and be like, guys, I talked to Trump and Vance and they're really cool. You know, they gave me a good fist bump. They were telling jokes that made me laugh. It was great. No, I would be talking to you about the things that matter, the things that affect you, because I serve ordinary people. I serve ordinary people. I talk about things that affect ordinary people. I'm not self-centered like Bill Maher. So what on earth happened with Bill Maher's brain? He went from a guy who criticized Trump in such explosive ways, in ways that even sometimes I found cringy. I'm a huge Trump critic, but during his first term, he would sometimes get a little overzealous in his Trump criticism, where he'd kind of be like, okay, buddy, that's not super original, like, ha, Trump bad, yeah. But this guy, he would go at it every day of Trump's presidency. Then he goes through some of Biden's presidency and he's kind of like shifting. He's like, you know, the woke pink-haired college kids are kind of goofy. They're kind of dumb. I don't like them. The pro-Palestine protesters are really annoying and entitled. And I think they're anti-Semites. I think that broke his brain, actually. I think that was one of those issues that really just turned something in him, turned some switch where he's like, oh, I associate these people as being on the left, so therefore I'm going to drift further right without admitting it. Well, now he finally admits it because he said he's a centrist on his show just recently. But yeah, now we've got this guy who's full on working to sanitize Trump. And while he may not vote for Trump, while he may never vote for a Republican candidate, what he is doing is effectively Republican propaganda. It is. It's saying, well, you know, look, guys, Trump's a cool dude. You know, he's a cool dude. And then the Republican outlets get to go out there and say, look, Bill Maher said Trump's a cool dude. See, you don't have to be a hard right winger to say Trump's a cool dude. You don't. So that's their propaganda line. You cannot allow them to get away with this propaganda, Bill. What on earth? You know, he's bringing on these guests lately. I think he brought in Stephen A. Smith shortly after the inauguration of Trump, where Stephen A. Smith said, oh, Trump was more normal than the Democrats. Like, how can you say that? How can you say that? The dude was talking about, like, Arnold Palmer's junk. The dude was out there talking about freaking, like, taking Greenland. He started talking about that early on in his presidency. Like, he slurs his words. He's a total nut job. How can you find this guy more normal than the Democrats, even for all the Democrats' weirdness? It's just playing into the far right hands. People need to stop doing this. So-called centrists need to stop doing this. When they stop doing this, maybe I'll believe them in their assertions that they're centrists. A true centrist is someone who recognizes that the Democrats just are better than the Republicans. And those people are so rare. I can count the number of them on my hand. So if you say that the Republican Party is better than the Democratic Party, you cannot call yourself a centrist. I am sorry. You are at very least center-right. Bill Maher, you are center-right, if not hard-right now. because of the propaganda that you are assisting. You are assisting far-right propaganda. This is the type of stuff, like they showed in Nazi Germany, stuff about like Hitler being charming. You are doing that with Trump right now. You are making Trump, just like Adolf Hitler, out to be charming. You're doing exactly what they did. Look, I'm someone who's ostensibly very anti-Trump, but I've got to say he's really charming. Even I, a grungy old liberal guy who's actually a centrist, I really think Trump was really cool and he made me feel great and he had a good sense of humor. Dude, you're helping the far right. You might not identify as far right. You don't have to. Either way, you're helping the far right. And you know what? I don't think he cares. He's in his late 60s, maybe early 70s, late 60s. But yeah, he's in his late 60s. He's doing well. He's found an angle. What is he going to be like in 2028? Is he going to be full on cheering the Republican Party on? Is he going to be voting for J.D. Vance? At this point, I do not know if I would be surprised. Would you be surprised? Would you be surprised if Bill Maher comes out and identifies as a Republican? Some people are saying that's what Gavin Newsom is going to do, because of the guests that he brought on his show, Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, Michael Savage. I don't know about that because he's a politician, but Bill Maher has never been a politician. He's just been a guy who complains about Trump and, identifies more with the Democrats, endorsed Bernie Sanders, supported Amy Klobuchar in the 2020 Democratic primaries. So who knows what's going on with him? Are the gears in his head turning so rapidly that he ends up endorsing Republican politicians? I don't know, but can we really rule it out? He seems like he's going the Joe Rogan way. Perhaps the Dave Rubin way, you could say. What is it with these comedians? These comedians who just are like, oh man, liberal bad. I used to be liberal, but now liberal got bad. Liberal support Palestine and liberal are anti-Semitic. Me no like liberal. This is so dumb, you guys. Please get out of this. And you know what? Yeah, the Democrats could be better with their messaging. They could. But just don't fall down the well of stupidity into the whole culture war thing of Republican good because liberal bad. No. Liberals and Republicans can both be bad in the same sense, Liberals obviously are better than the far right. You should not be acting like they're equal. They are not two sides of the same coin. We've got one side which is utterly dismantling our government, violating the Constitution on a daily basis, and the other side who's just like, let's not do absurd tariffs. Let's keep the federal government intact. Let's not take Greenland. Let's not start a bunch of new wars. That's the dichotomy here, dude. Grow up. Stop living in far-right fantasy land. Stop helping the far right. Stop pretending to be a centrist. Put on the MAGA hat on your show if you really want to be honest. Will he do it? I don't think so. I don't think there's much honesty around in these right-wing comedians who pretend to be centrist. Joe Rogan, similarly, he is the hard right now. He's a Trump loyalist. He'll criticize Trump very meekly, but it's just to throw in some of that plausible deniability. Just to get the right-wingers to say, oh, look, leftist Joe Rogan likes Trump. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Trump's just that cool that he wins over leftists and former liberals. Yeah, no, he's not winning over actual leftists or former liberals. He is running the most far-right administration in modern U.S. history, and that's a fact. That's objective. You can't even debate that. So, no. Stop aiding far-right propaganda by claiming to be a centrist and supporting Trump and acting sympathetic toward Trump and doing segments where you give glowing reviews of Trump's personality. Personality isn't even the most important thing, and I can't hammer that home enough. It's policy. It's policy that you got to talk about. It would be one thing if Trump were still a candidate for office and you were talking about how cool his personality is, because in that case, he wouldn't be enacting policies through executive order and all that, stripping people of Medicaid, signing bills that do that. But now he's in office. Now is the time to hold him accountable, even if you like his personality. And Bill Maher can't bring himself to do that. Kid Rock told me to go see Trump, so yeah, I'm going to do that because he's my friend and he's cool. No, dude. You done effed up. I'm sorry to say. You done effed up, Bill. And I look forward to seeing you lose your audience. At least a good chunk of them. It's really sad to see. You have fallen so mightily. Jon Stewart is on the rise, man. I'm telling you, he knows where it's at. At one point, I felt like Jon Stewart and Bill Maher were kind of like twin flames, but now it's like, okay, Bill Maher, who used to be more aggressive against the Republicans than Jon Stewart, I would say, and more defensive of the Democrats, yeah, now he's actually become the one who's more defensive of Republicans and more critical of Democrats. And Jon Stewart criticizes them both, but he's mostly focusing on the insanity of Trumpism. So yeah, that's the state of modern so-called progressive comedy with Bill Maher. In reality, it's center-right. I hope Jon Stewart calls him out. That would be pretty funny to see. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What is your opinion of Bill Maher's visit to the White House and getting dinner with President Trump? Watch that segment that he did. I promise you I'm not misrepresenting anything. And at worst, I'm just slightly exaggerating things. Like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you in my next video.